back. This is Boomer Life on Aug15th2016.
Wherever you need me, I'll be there.
This is Boomer Life on Aug15th2016. I'm Joanne Sutton, and today we're talking to friends with the Alzheimer's Society of British Columbia, and we're talking about what it's like to live in small-town BC when dealing with Alzheimer's or other dementias. What services are available to you, and maybe some of the challenges that you might face. Our first guest is Heather Inglis, formerly of Burnaby, who now lives in Ashcroft, and she's very involved with the local community, from what I understand. She's also a personal caregiver for her mother, who has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Hi, Heather.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm very well today. Thanks, Joanne.
Excellent. Now, thank you very much for joining us on the show today, and I know you're calling in, but it's not long distance. I understand that you're in the Lower Mainland right now. Can you maybe just give us a quick rundown of why you're here?
Well, my husband had a liver transplant 5 months ago, and as part of his follow-up, we're required to come to the liver transplant clinic in Vancouver fairly regularly, and that's why we're here.
Oh, my. So caregiving for your husband while you're also caregiving for your mother in Ashcroft, who's living with dementia. It must be quite a challenge for you to take on. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how that's working for you and how you're coping, and paint us a picture of juggling both loved ones in your life.
I will do that. It's been a very difficult year. My husband was very ill last year. We almost lost him in the fall, and he was hospitalized both in Kamloops and at Vancouver General. I put 25,000 kilometers on the car last year, driving to and from Ashcroft and Vancouver and Ashcroft and Kamloops to make sure that, my husband had the support he needed in the hospital, as well as being home regularly enough to give my mother the support that she needed at home, and also to be able to bring her to appointments in Vancouver. My mom still lives independently, thank goodness for her, and so she needs me here. She gets anxious when I'm not here, and so being physically present for her is very important to her sort of ongoing well-being. And I couldn't bring her with me because, unfortunately, when she's out of her comfort zone and her familiar environment, the symptoms of the Alzheimer's disease are heightened. And so she becomes more confused and more agitated, and it's too difficult for her. So I tried to split myself in half. So now that my husband is on the mend, I'm able to focus more attention to my mother and spend more time with her, and I think that is working well for her and well for me, because I have some time to breathe and to be calmer in my support of her.
Oh, Heather, you've just painted a picture of Superwoman. So,
well, I have to say that I'm blessed because I'm in my early 50s, and I was able to retire, which has allowed me to have the time to take on this full-time job. Because if I still was in the workforce, it would have been impossible.
And it definitely is a full-time job, and we'll get to some of those responsibilities in a moment. So Heather Inglis lives in the village of Ashcroft, British Columbia. And for those of you that don't know exactly where Ashcroft is, well, it's nestled along the banks of the Thompson River, not too far from Kamloops, not too far from Cache Creek, but those are really the largest major centers that are close by. And we're talking a population of what in Ashcroft, Heather? Maybe 1,600?
1,600 or 1,700. It's a village.
And that's on a Saturday night, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so
actually on Saturday night the streets are rolled up.
Oh, I thought it would be a happening place on a Saturday.
No.
Oh, okay. So Heather has already established she's the primary caregiver for her mother, who lives in that community. So let's talk about a few of the challenges and advantages that you find living in a rural community while you're on this dementia journey. And I think you caught all of our attention when you said you put 25,000 kilometers kilometers on your vehicle, driving to and from hospitals as part of your caregiving for your husband. But I'm sure there's more challenges involved with your mom as well.
Absolutely. My mother actually only moved to Ashcroft a year ago. She was a lifelong resident of Burnaby, and we made the decision together to move her to Ashcroft so that I could be more of a support for her as the dementia worsens. So part of the driving was also because some of the support services for Alzheimer's is in the Lower Mainland. We had originally been diagnosed at the Specialized Seniors Care Center in New Westminster, and so we had appointments there fairly regularly to have some medication that might help her, to have her followed up. My mother also has atrial fibrillation, so she was associated with the cardiac care clinic at Royal Columbian Hospital. So that was part of the travel as well. Now we're in the process of moving those doctors to Kamloops, so hopefully that will mean less travel and be easier on her.
What would some of the advantages be of being in a small town?
Well, I have to say that there are a lot of advantages to living in a small town. And one of those is that it is going to be easier for my mother to live in her own home for a longer period of time, because this Ashcroft is an amazing community. It's a very caring community. And when we moved her here, she had always been very fit. My mother is 80 years old, living with Alzheimer's, but she can hold a plank for 60 seconds. I can't do that.
Love it.
So her fitness schedule is the core of her routine, and her routine really helps her manage. So her fitness classmates pick her up 3 times a week. I'm not involved at all. They take care of her. She's able to walk to everything she needs to walk to. So she goes, regularly to the library, the bakery, the post office, and everybody in town, because it's a small community, now knows her. They know that she's my mom. And so as the disease progresses, I feel fairly confident that if someone noticed something out of sorts, that she seemed uncertain or lost, that someone would actually stop and either give me a call or, reach out to her to see if she needed any help. And so, in fact, when she moved here, the postmistress said, "Heather, I want to meet your mother because I need to know what she looks like." And I thought, holy cow, that's amazing that there's that kind of proactive support in this community.
Mm-hmm. You may not be finding that in Burnaby.
Exactly. It's when I lived in Burnaby, where I lived most of my life, I often didn't know my neighbors, let alone people downtown caring enough that I have an older parent coming to live here with this disease and wanting to help me.
Mm-hmm. So, Heather, being in the small community of Ashcroft, do you ever feel isolated or alone in your caregiving position?
I don't. And the reason is because we have an outstanding home health care team here. And because they supported my husband over the past year, and it will be the same group of people who will support my mother as time goes on, they are very good. And the people in this community, they know when someone needs help, they're there to offer it. When we had to drop everything to go to Vancouver for the liver transplant, people just came out of the woodwork to house sit, to pet sit, to take care of things for us. And again, that's not something that I feel would have been available to us in the Lower Mainland. Everything is so easy here. It takes 5 minutes to get anywhere. It's not like your friend has to drive an hour across town to do something for you. So that the proximity of everything and the closeness of the community is a real benefit.
It gives you a little bit of peace of mind as well, I'm sure.
It does.
Yeah.
We've had some, we have definitely have healthcare challenges here. We had a terrible doctor shortage last year. We were down to one doctor, but through lots of work, we now have, we're back to 3. But now we have a nursing shortage. So, there's a balance to what is offered healthcare-wise in this community, and it's always a challenge. People work really hard to meet the needs. So I'd say that that's probably the biggest challenge. But the dedication of the people who are here is just second to none.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you're actually speaking to us today partly because your connection with the Alzheimer's Society of BC for a variety of different support and programs or services. Tell us about that connection. Did you reach out to them, or how did that all happen?
When my mother was first diagnosed, we were given a card for the coordinator in Burnaby, and we met with her. And she told us what services were available, and she gave us some ideas about things that we might want to look into. And one of those conversations we had was about where my mom would best live out her years, and she helped us come to the decision that moving sooner than later would be best for my mom. Then she put me in touch with the coordinator out of Kamloops, and so I attend monthly caregiver support meetings in Ashcroft, and it's lovely to have them at home, so I don't have to go very far. And because there's unfortunately a fair number of families living with Alzheimer's in Ashcroft, we've been able to support an education series being offered locally, which has been having great attendance both by caregivers and healthcare providers and people who are just generally interested in our community. My mom also goes to a monthly early-mid Alzheimer's support group in Kamloops, and people come from all over the southern interior, from Clinton and Chase, Ashcroft to meet in Kamloops, and that is such a great support because she gets to spend an hour with people who are in her situation, and they realize that they're not alone in their journey, and they actually have quite a bit of fun because at some point, if you don't laugh, you cry.
Absolutely.
And so that's another great resource for us. Also, the coordinator is available to us if we have a question about how to deal with a new behavior or change. If I have a question, I'll email her. And because she knows both my mom and I, she can help me find a solution. So I feel a great deal of support comes from the Alzheimer's Society.
That's wonderful. Is there anything else that you feel is important to share with us today from your perspective of being a caregiver or being in that small town Ashcroft?
Well, I think just generally, first of all, I'm so pleased that that the station is doing this series. One of the things that I've learned is that 10% of people over the age of 65 have some form of dementia, and how we need to really grasp that, and we need to be patient with our seniors because we don't know what they're dealing with except to know that they're doing the best they can. And if you know a caregiver of someone who has dementia, just reach out and ask if there's any way that you can help. Sometimes it's such a simple thing, or just being asked how we are, just makes our lives a whole lot easier. Don't be afraid of dementia. Don't be afraid with people with dementia. They're still the people they were always. They just are deeply forgetful and need a helping hand and a smile. So I think that's just it. I just think that the more we educate ourselves and the more we can learn, because chances are someone you know is living with this, or a family you know is living with this.
Heather, we want to thank you very much for sharing your story with us today on the challenges of dealing with dementia in a small town.
Well, it was my pleasure, Joanne.
Very powerful words.
Thank you.
Thanks, and best of luck being Superwoman, and yes, with both your husband and your mother.
Well, things are looking up, and we have a beautiful place to lay our heads at night, and that's a good thing.
Excellent. Thank you.
You bet.
This is Boomer Life on CL 650. We've been speaking with Heather Inglis, from a woman from Ashcroft who's being both a caregiver for her mother who has Alzheimer's disease and her husband who has gone through a liver transplant. We're also speaking with CEO Maria Howard from the Alzheimer's Society of British Columbia. And today's topic is living with Alzheimer's or dementia in small town BC, somewhere outside of a major city. The benefits? Well, basically the pros and cons. We have a registered nurse from the Interior Health Authority giving us her perspective next on Boomer Life on CL 650.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.